There we go.
Does that work there?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen. I have, I can do that from this perspective, right?
Set out.
Can you all see that?
No.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Well, as Tava was saying, what we have to think about is certainly, as we've met with our tribal representatives before from around the state, this project has always had the desire to be inclusive and include all of Montana's history, which includes pre-Montana history with tribal homelands here as well. We've walked you through what the building looks like, what the outside of the building is looking like, and that's, there's some development going on there. We've taken you inside, and that's what we want to talk about now. We walked you through the Homelands Gallery, and then just on our last meeting, just started talking about the space for the tribal homelands exhibit area. And so that's what we want to focus on today. We're not going to talk much about the rest of it, but I will kind of refresh our memory. This is the overall plan of the building with the existing building starting here on the right-hand side, which includes the Russell Gallery, and there will be changing exhibits over here. And this is the new portion that we'll be talking about. Not so much the commons where you enter in and come into the building itself, but the Homeland Gallery over here. As we get started in talking about the tribal homelands component of the Homelands Gallery, there's some images that we put together just to kind of inspire us about what some of those spaces could look like. So as you'll see in some of the drawings that we have and we'll be discussing, we're thinking that a portion of it could actually evoke this feeling of the powwow arbor, that idea of coming together, especially as we all know with powwows, it's inclusive of everyone. It's inclusive of all tribes. It's inclusive of non-natives as well, to be a part of that celebration. And so there's elements of that we've started to work into the overall design. And there's great examples around the state. What you saw with the powwow arbor before is up at Fort Belknap, at the college campus. And then we have other representations around the state. I'm very fortunate to have traveled to all of the reservations and really learned from how each tribe expresses its own culture. And so some of these images are from those visits. Over to the left here is up at Salish and Kootenai in their tribal headquarters, and how they've designed it so it resembles that teepee lodge where we used to meet and still greet one another and spend time together. And so, but it brings it into a more contemporary feel to it. There's another example of what that looks like here in the middle too, with an exhibit space. This is actually up in Canada, I believe, that is part of a museum that a tribe, the Siksika tribe, built there. And off to the right is an image from a photographer who used to live with the Northern Cheyenne tribe, and took this early morning photograph with their permission of one of the teepees and one of the meetings that were happening inside the teepee. It just kind of gives you a sense of actually being there. There's different things that are important to us. And we talked a little bit about this before, about what values do we want this basically this intertribal exhibit space to have. There's certain parts of our culture that we share, you know, whether it's how we include the buffalo into our traditions, or sweetgrass, our gatherings, how we come together. And I think what's really important, and these pictures kind of show it, is how much our, not only our past is, but what we're doing presently too. And some of these exhibits that you see are reflective of that. So that's what we'll be talking about some today. We'll probably won't exactly define it, but we want to know from you all what type of exhibits and what type of information do we want to show.
Major, this is Smokey.
Yes.
I think what we're going to do is a little later on, I'll get the dates on all the zones. And we've developed a timeline from time immemorial up to the early 70s. And forwarding that to you, then talking about it at a later date, some of those areas where you guys might be interested in.
Hello?
And getting back to our conversation here, we would then agree on some of those timeline items. Then further, we would then develop the exhibit surrounding that particular event that we agree is important to the area. A lot of the items that we have would probably coincide with some of the other nations. Some of them would be similar because Plains tribes, you know, they do share some of the what I say, the dates maybe, or the historical moments, or whatever that might be. And then we can determine, you know, exactly what zone would take in which event. And of course, the beginning of Montana and all of that stuff.
How do I get this picture up?
Yeah.
Here's me.
That would be great, Smokey. And as we talked about before, we kind of walked you all the way through each of those zones.
Right.
And we can certainly give you those dates on those and the time frames. So it would be good. And I think you're right. There's similarities in some of the treaties and some of the activities that were going on, whether it be boarding schools and things like that. So it would be good to get some insight. The other thing too, to keep in mind is if there's an opportunity for any artifacts that that can be shared, of course, that have.
I said hi to him.
Is there someone just signing in here? I can hear someone speaking there.
This is probably for you, Rob. Message.
Who's that? We can hear someone on there.
I think it might be Steve Major.
Oh.
He just muted.
Oh, okay. All right. Was that Steve Lozar?
I'm thinking maybe.
Okay.
I'm here.
Oh, good. Hi, Steve.
I've been listening.
Good. Good. I'm glad that you're able to log on. Are you able to see the presentation at all?
I am.
Okay, great, great. Yeah, and so Smokey, yeah, we can certainly share that. And what we want to talk about today is really focused on that time period that starts right after Montana's Constitution was established here, or at least the I should say when in 1973 when the reform happened. And so it doesn't mean, and like we've just reminding ourselves, is that doesn't mean that we're staying in just that, you know, 70s, 80s, 90s timeframe, but it's what tribes want to represent for ourselves now. And so that's what we'll be talking about, is that exhibit space. So what I have up on the screen right now is just, again, some of the art that has been that's on the reservations around here that I've kind of taken in and really speak to some of our traditions, whether it be ledger art or how we do some of our, ceremonies, as you see in the mural here, which is down in the Crow and Northern Cheyenne Hospital. And then even how we detail some of the finishes using our tribal culture in our expression of that. So these are just kind of meant to inspire us to think about how we might interpret it into these spaces. The next couple images here are of some Native American exhibits in different museums. This one's in Utah, where they also were taking a look at a few tribes and representing them together. This one was interesting and seems to have a nice feel to it, how you can come in and there's an opportunity to have a kind of a storytelling space, maybe in the center there, a place for people to rest. These were some of the things that we had talked about last time that seemed to resonate with our tribal partners, is that this space should have an area where you can stop and reflect. One of the other comments was we should have some type of media so we can tell our stories about us as tribal people and how we relate to one another as well. We really were happy to hear that people were saying, well, how do we make this an intertribal exhibit? And that's really the goal of this, is how can we represent, from what we can tell at this point, is about 14 tribes, if we're including Métis as well. And so we have to, that's the challenge that we have. How do we put a lot of different tribes, different tribal nations all in one spot? So here's a couple examples that show how they've done that. This one is at is it the Royal Albert Museum? I believe that's where we got this photograph from. And again, it's showing Native peoples. What's interesting about this is if you can look around the gallery space here, there's structure behind this as well. So kind of keep that in mind, because there's a part of this that reflects back to our powwow arbor idea. And so I think that's kind of nice to show, elements of our culture in different ways, even in how you finish off the exhibit cases, and not just what's in it too.
Well, Major, that might be good for that zone 8 that we talked about, because there wasn't really enough area in zone 8 to really describe every tribe in detail. And something like this, including the past image, might be something that would be able to fulfill that, and then have that interactive circle like you have in the middle. And then, everybody contributes to that little area of some of they say the 4 major important parts of each nation would be exhibited, or something of that tone.
Right. Yeah, that's a good observation on this, and that's what I was thinking too. And if you look at this, they've got some height in this space too, and we have some height that we can consider if we want to do something above to, like what they've shown.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah.
It's Darnell. Up there at the height of it, where you could have an interchangeable projection of each band at the time, or each tribe. But let's not forget the children. On these dioramas on the bottom, I see maybe some clothing, but our children are one of our greatest assets. And so we need to maybe emphasize a little more with the children, as well as the music. So we have that in common as all intertribal people, is our children are our future, of course. So if we could combine all these great ideas together, but keep the children, bear that in mind, along with the music.
Yeah, well, great. Yeah, those are good points. The other thing I like about this too, Darnell, Is it like what we're trying to do with literally with homelands is also keep in mind the land. Without the land, we're not here. You know, this is home, and so I like how they're reminding us about that with that too. Good. Well, with those type of thoughts and images, we'll kind of get into the overall, the few passes that we took on this. We have 3 different options that we did. As those of you that have worked on, you know, projects, whether it be a school building or even a water utility building or developing anything like this, you know, you go through a number of options, you consider things. As we discussed last time, we have a finite space to work with, and it is tight, so we have to make every inch count. So in getting to that point, you explore different options. So that's what.
And this is Total Screen Design. We have your apron ready. Want to give me a call to
I
see
think somebody else might
when
need.
I should put it in the old white pickup if you want me to do that, or if you're going to stop
I
in.
think somebody is
Fine.
needs to mute.
Friday.
We can hear your conversation. Thank you. So we have a few options that we wanted to discuss with you. So we can talk about each one as we go, or wait till the end, however you feel, but jump right in. So again, a reminder of the overall homelands space from zone 1, where we come in, you come all the way through zone 2 and 3. And in here, we start to go up on different ramps, and there's a timeline that comes along this curving spine. And so as you come through the spaces, it's each different phase of Montana. So this first part is pre-Montana, zones 1 and zones 2. And so we have gone over these zones with you roughly the last time. And so all of these will lead up to zone 6 and zone 7, where we get up to the highest point here. And then we enter into zone 8. So zone 8, the tribal nations exhibit, is what we want to talk to you about today. So if you look at that footprint, that size that we have there, the first pass of this, we took it just as is. So we have that space and that we could utilize. And in this first layout, I'll describe to you is if you can imagine like 2 teepees coming together, one here and one here. And this one just kind of gave the idea of, well, maybe you have both teepees that come together and you have that entire space to work with. So that's one concept that we're looking at. So you would enter in through this end here. As you come into the space, then you would have the exhibit booths, the different cases that surround you as you come in for each of the tribes. You also have cases in the center, since you can wander around and through this kind of initial space. So that would be one room here. This other space over here then would have, like we had talked about, an area where you can go and sit. And then this would be where the screen is that we talked about with the media production that includes all of the tribes. We would have additional artifacts or exhibits or something along this wall here. So this kind of gives us a wide open space to work with. Again, this is just rough, but these might have, again, the lodge poles that lean into the space as well. So what this allows is you can come in, stay in this space for a while, watch the film that we have developed here, and then come out through the same doorway and continue on down to the next area. So that's one thought. And I don't know if there was anything else that Taver or anybody else wanted to add to our thoughts for this space. Or if you had any questions at all.
Major, the only thing that I would suggest is that you have a directional flow layout there, so you don't have people going to the left, going to the right, and then you know, having them go against each other. Usually there's you're coming in the entry, you follow a directional area, and then everybody's going in the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
See what I mean? So that we don't have people going from the left, coming around to the seating area or in the above opening area where they're conflicting and bumping into each other. While one direction is entry and exit.
Good. Good.
The exit is in the entry, right?
What's that?
The entry is on the exit side also?
Yes. So this is the entry and the exit, both.
So we
In this,
might
in
have-
this version of the plan, Major, I think you've addressed actually some of these questions in other versions of the plan. So maybe we should go through all of them and then come back to it.
Yeah, that's good, because the second version, we kind of kept that in mind, Smokey, about how do we guide people through it.
Right.
And so yeah, let me show you this next one. And we tried to keep that in mind.
Excuse me, Major.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Steve. Just since the very first time we've looked at this, one of the things that has struck me, I've actually talked to some of our tribal members here, is that Salish Kootenai is real fundamental in our language and our view of the world around us, since we're mountain Indians. They say we're plateau Indians, and there's some truth to that for the Salish, but the Kootenays are absolute mountain Indians. But in the Salish language, there's a real important word, Sinjelman. Sinjelman means surround something. And if you're here on the reservation and you look around, that's the theme that you see from your first birth to your death, is that that feeling of being surrounded. And it's so different. My mom was enrolled at Fort Peck, where things are pretty flat, and it was always difficult for her to come out here, and where mountains are coming straight up from the middle of the valley here, and so I like this idea with the curves that you have in here, because it harkens to us in a certain amount of what's the best word, security. Being surrounded, Sinjelman, arms that go around us and take care of us, and I just am real glad to see those turns and those twists, because it gives me that feeling.
That's nice. Huh. Yeah, it's good to look at it from that perspective too. I know when I was younger, I was a forest fire fighter, and but I learned in the flatlands over in the rolling hills of eastern Montana, and then I came over to western Montana, and I always felt claustrophobic. I felt like I couldn't see far enough away. And I think that's a good thing for both, because it's a different perspective from eastern Montana to western Montana, from eastern tribes to western tribes. And so that's something that we'll keep in mind. That's good. Great. So let's go to option number 2. So we decided to take a completely different look at it. So it may have elements of this, but a different way to walk through the exhibit. So this one, what we've done is, remember when I mentioned the arbor, is that we use that kind of arbor structure for this first area. And then we also utilized the lodge for the second area here. So we kind of divided it up a little bit. But what we did also was we allowed someone to travel along this path a little bit further and then come into this arbor exhibit space area. So you come in, and this, as soon as you come in, the blue here is really the structure of that arbor and the awning that comes above. So the dotted line is where the overhang is. And then the red area here would be those exhibit spaces, much like we saw in one of the photographs where they continue all the way around and kind of connect together, but they represent different tribes within here. The same on this side as well. So Smokey, like you were saying, you know, then what happens is this kind of guides us in, and in a way guides us in a clockwise fashion to come around and experience all of this. And then as you exit, you come off and go down another ramp. This is the outside wall here, but what we'd like to do is do some type of a treatment on that wall, whether it's like the large photographs that we saw, or some type of mural or something that kind of keeps you in that environment of going from the arbor, getting ready to come into the teepee lodge. So you come along the teepee here, and then just before you enter in, we have an opportunity. There's this wall, we have the ability to have a opening for a window here. It's sometimes a challenge in a museum to have natural light coming in, but in this case, the teepee kind of helps to block that direct light, and it could be a diffused light. And that's what I kind of imagined here, is that we could maybe represent the sun here. You know, our lodges, we face that morning sun so that we greet it when we wake up in the morning. So we could kind of emulate that feeling that there's this sun, maybe it's just peeking over, you know, a mountaintop. So we see a portion of it. And then we can turn and come into the teepee lodge. Same sort of thing in here. We still have a place to sit on one side and a place to view the film on this other side. This is just like the very first pass. There's not a lot of detail, but just kind of giving you an idea of some of the use of the spaces and how we would come in and exit. So then what happens is, as you exit, you don't have to go all the way back. You can continue on down this ramp that takes us down into the next spaces here. So the other components along here indicates, you know, we could have some artwork or different exhibits that hang down on the lower part of the teepee here. So a couple things I want to talk about with this space, and I need to go back, if I can, to remind ourselves of this image here on the right-hand side. If we use the teepee lodge, we have an opportunity to do something special on the outside too. So there's already an activity inside, but where you see these images of the people in this inside the teepee itself and their movement, we could actually do something that's a projector on the teepee and gives it that feeling. So as people are going through the other zones, they can look up and see that teepee there and see that there's something going on, and it kind of creates a feeling of what might be happening there. So they want to get up and take a look. So it not only serves as a space to have something happening inside, it serves also as an opportunity to do some nice stuff on the outside as well. So the last thing I'll share with this option 2 is I did a quick elevation of this, so you kind of get an idea of what these spaces might look like. So this is the arbor space that I was talking about. You come down the ramp a bit, and then you come into that space. So the structure would overhang on top a little bit, and the exhibit booths would be below here. And then this is that exit as you exit out and head over to the lodge. And then as you go down the ramp, then you're at a little bit different level for what's going on in the lodge. And then as you come out, you go down another ramp heading down. This area here is the zones, 2, 3, 4 that are ramping up slowly as you head up too. So that kind of gives you another concept of how that space could look too.
Major, on that second option, what I see is some wasted space.
Mhm.
I like the new entry style coming in where you begin to provide the direction. But if you look up in that where it says Arbor Gallery, there's an area there that to me needs to be utilized. And where the Arbor Gallery is pointing to that exhibit area, that probably maybe that circle could end right there. And that whole wall area now becomes another exhibit area.
Mhm.
The same down below where it says seating,
Mhm.
where the arrow comes into there, that area right there, rather than have that full wall of the lodge there, that could be, this circle could be extended beside that, and that space also utilized for exhibit. Where it says teepee gallery, I think that's where you finish off the component of the lodge, the circle, which would be a continuance of the major circle that we have up by the entryway. And then, of course, the exit would be then where you have it now. But I think that with too much of the circle on that second lodge, there's a lot of space that we could be utilized that would otherwise be, I don't know, right now it's inaccessible. Except the one coming out of the large lodge going up towards the sun window, that is a walkway, which we would have walkway in the first option anyway.
Mhm.
But that's just an idea of having some of that limited space being more useful than gardening it off with a circle,
That's
which
correct.
we've already established the concept of the lodge as being the basics of the Montana tribes anyway.
Right. That's great. Those are the type of things that, as we start to develop these and do a couple different options, those are the things that we start to notice. So I'm glad you pointed that out. We were noticing too, there's some negative space. If I go to this area here, I don't know if Ian is on, but Ian's with Main Street Design is lead exhibit designer. And as we were looking at this, he was saying the same thing. There's this space in here that's really just lost in kind of a strange space to connect. And then you were mentioning too, in plan, we were starting to notice that too. If we want to make use of every single space, and we've got a lot of tribes to represent in one way or another, then we have to create, use every single inch. So those things that you pointed out are exactly what we were hoping to hear from you. I think we need to keep that in mind. And so with that, I'll just go back and look at this again. I mean, one of the nice things about this is that it uses everything here and makes it all available. The only downside is having to come in one way and enter or exit the same way too. But there's some advantages to keeping it open like this and utilizing that space.
I've seen exhibits where they have the entrance and exit the same. And what they did is they built a little rail separating the two. Right where you have the word entry, there would be a rail that would go along there, so that definitely people coming in from the left side there would now come in, circle around, go through, go to the seating, come back where the lodge pole identified, and then come back up towards the entry. But that little rail, guardrail there would divide your entry and exit, and then you come back out.
Yeah. And
That's just an idea, but
I have a question for you on that, because what I've experienced myself with some of our traditions and even with the powwows is that usually we're going in that clockwise direction. Does that sound correct? If we were to use something like this, that we guide people to go walk in that clockwise direction as well?
Well,
Yes.
for Blackfeet, that's the direction that you would go. I know some of the other tribes, in some of their powwows that I've attended, they go the opposite way. And I've never asked why, because I just always assumed that it was something within their traditions. But for Blackfeet and some of the other tribes, I know the clockwise is always, because that's part of nature.
Mhm, mhm.
Our stories, that's part of nature, going clockwise.
Well, we'll certainly be exploring that with other tribes too and find out. I know the same for Northern Cheyenne. That's usually like in the Sweat Lodge,
Mhm.
in different activities, the powwow itself. Just something to keep in mind. Sometimes it's those subtle things that to me make a difference, because it's not just about what we're seeing, it's how we're seeing it too.
Mhm. Good.
Okay. Any other thoughts on these two? We have a third one.
Oh, wait, before we leave.
Yeah.
The entry on the second option might be something that would be incorporated, and then we could take that wall in option 1 and move that pathway out of there, and then expand that exhibit area to encompass that walk area, because we now have that walk area coming around to the top side to where the sun window comes in, where our flow comes around that way, and we now utilize that walkway that's in option 1.
So I'm trying to understand, are you saying if we were to move the lodge this direction then?
No, we would take option 1,
Mhm.
go back to option 1. We would keep this concept, but you see down where you say lodge poles,
Yeah.
we would move that whole exhibit wall down, encompassing the green area.
Oh, the walkway itself.
Now we would take option 2 exit, and now we would come in and we would have that pathway coming up through the sun window, and then exiting on through to the right side. That way we're encompassing that walkway area into our exhibit area.
Oh, kind of coming down through here?
Well, no, we would keep the same entry and exit like we have. Go back to option 1. See where it says lodge poles?
Yeah.
We
Move.
would eliminate that walkway,
Yeah.
and we would be able to pull that wall all the way encompassing the walkway, because now we've already got the walkway coming through the entry, tribal showcase, and then where we have screen, that would now become in option 2 would be our exit.
Okay.
Coming on in now to the, there you go, coming
Yeah.
on into the walkway again. That
Okay.
way we're utilizing that whole walkway space there.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. So with that in mind, I do want to talk about 3 because it's kind of interesting.
We have 3?
Yeah. It's always good to have choices, right? As long as we don't have too many. But this one, before we leave 2, we already kind of did this. We expanded on 2, we expanded this pretty big, and then I pushed it down to encompass part of that walkway. That's how we ended up with the walkway here. But I understand what you're saying about incorporating as much of that as possible. So I like that. So going to 3, this one's really very, very rough. We just started exploring this, and Ian took a pass at this just today. And there's a couple things about this that are interesting. So for instance, it's using the same 2 elements that we have, the arbor on the left here and the lodge on the right. The lodge again is pushed down, so it actually overlaps where that walkway was. So we gain a little bit of space here. And then of course, we're married with the other zones too. And so it's like a balloon, you push one side and the other side has to give. So over here, this could grow a little bit to make up some of that space. But if we're turning our arbor a little bit, we can enter in here instead. And the other, and it allows us to walk on through, again, experience that whole space, but walk on through and then enter into the teepee lodge here again. This section, how it's divided is a little different because this one has actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 exhibit spaces in here, and we would have to commingle with these because we've got, like I said, probably 14 tribes that we're combining together in showing each of the tribes. But it shows how over here, we can utilize some of that space and still have a nice arbor feel over here and the lodge feel. This has probably grown a little bit in size too, because it comes down past that walkway some. So it's kind of similar to what you were saying, Smokey, is that using as much of the space as possible, whether it's used by the tribal nations homeland gallery over here or by the other zones on the other side. And then you would continue to walk all the way through and continue on down here. Does that make sense? The one thing I want to point out is like these sections here, like I said, there's 8 different cases that we have there. And if you go back to this one, you count in between here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then this could be some space that we utilize too and still allow a passageway around it too, if we wanted to do that.
Major, this is Tabor. I just wanted to throw in, because it's something you and we have talked about in the last time we went through this. I think it's an important discussion to have both between us and the tribes and among the tribes, how we present the individual tribes and nations. Is it a continuous display, as we saw in the Royal Alberta Museum example that you shared? Obviously, the individual tribes would have individual stories and artifacts displayed, but the casework suggests a continuum. Whereas if you go to option 3, sorry, now I'm doing like Smokey, I'm making you click back and forth.
No, that's fine.
If in fact we're carving this up into separate, the arbor rafters, if you will, translate into walls within the cases, then we're presenting the tribes either to a case or something like that, individual tribes in their own cases. I think you could make an argument for either approach, probably. But I guess I want to make a pitch for the idea that we don't build walls between the tribes, that we allow the tribes to overlap and interact with one another in these cases, so that if there was a way to have them be continual as opposed to broken into separate discrete segments, I feel like that might very subtly express the commonality that we're trying to get at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's an element of segregating and separating individually, but I think that each tribe would want to identify its own identity rather than mix. I'll use the word mix, because even on option 3, if you look at the upper, if you go pointing the area, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, you go to area 5. If you were to take area 5 and put that against the wall and come down that wall side, you'd be able to include a lot more exhibits along that whole side.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying is that you get those conical shapes and you get a lot of that wasted area in that. And this would eliminate that particular area.
Yeah.
But I also think too that there has to be, well, before I forget, is somebody's gonna say, well, who gets exhibit 1? And I think we should agree that alphabetically, we would put the tribes in that category.
Mhm.
Because if we put Blackfeet in exhibit 1, there's gonna be somebody say, well, why did Smoky and Darnell and the Blackfeet get exhibit 1 while we should have been exhibit 1? But if we do it alphabetically, that would be I guess, a solution as to why somebody was picked over somebody else. I've run into that so many times, and I thought I better make that a point of interest anyway.
No, it is a good point, and it sounds kind of rudimentary, but it is important. Just like what you were talking about, is that each tribal nation is separate from the other in how it operates, its government, its so language. So there needs to be some of the individuality. Now, what
Yeah,
Tabor,
if I could comment on that. Oh,
Yeah.
excuse me, Major. If
No,
I could comment on that as
Yeah, go
well,
ahead,
as
Steve.
this is Steve. I really do agree with that. I know that here at Salish Kootenai, we're very different, and not only our language but our spirituality and our worldview, and we factor in the Pend Oreille in the middle of our reserve,
Yeah.
which are different than the Bitterroot Salish, and I think that I hate to say the cliche, but separate but equal. Um, when I was on the council for years, we always had to balance that between the Salish and the Kootenai, and I think it's it may not be the common thoughts out there today, but it still is with our people, and so many of us got sent to boarding school. There's still with older people like myself, there's still those where you kind of stick up for your side, and I hate to say sides because we all have to work together, but it's a fact of the matter, and so I think Smokey's onto something right there, and I also wanted to comment a bit as we're kind of moving through these things. What Darnell said about the children is that to me, if children can be, we have those wall displays and those cabinets and all of those things. If children can be just a general part of all of that, you see kids there everywhere because we see kids everywhere we go, and we include them, and so I think rather than just necessarily a kids section, that constant awareness of how important those kids are. And I say that I'm the grandpa of 12 kids, and I can't remember all of their names, and they're jumping all over me, and I absolutely love it, but that's just the way we are,
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. These are really important. I mean, it feeds back into what we talked about the last meeting, started to talk about, was values. To me, whenever we can talk about the values and infuse the values in what we're doing here, we as tribal people, then I think we're doing something successful. So, what type of values do we bring to this? One that we heard was, and we hear again today, is, we're individual tribes, but there's a unity and intertribalness as well. So how do we represent those two values? And starting with that, I want to point this out, is that's part of the two, each one of these designs has two components. One allows that individuality of the tribal nations in this first area here. And then in the second area is where we can talk about that unity. This idea of the film it can really start to bring all of the tribes together and show people who are coming to visit Montana just the diversity that we have in tribal people alone. And so I think that's where we can show that unity as Indian country here in Montana. So I think it's not impossible to have both, you know, as you were saying, Steve, separate but equal. There can be components of both in each of these. So I think as we eke out those values, then it really helps us to design the spaces that's going to work to tell those stories. So those are great comments. I like that. And the whole idea, and you caught right onto this as you're commenting on these spaces, is that this is kind of the first pass. We're trying to define the uses in the spaces and what type of stories we want to tell in those spaces. And then as we go further, then it's going to be the what. What do we want to actually show in there? And before I forget, coming back to what you said, Taver, I think there's an opportunity, if we choose, and this is a question to our partners, in these, say for instance, in these spaces, if it was, there was individual opportunity for each of the tribal nations to express what they wanted to in there, that these could be open enough that there isn't a hard wall in between. There doesn't even have to be a hard wall here, but that those exhibits kind of bleed into one another. If we could look at it in a elevation, is that we're seeing, you know, one tribe represented here, but some of it might bleed over here and some of it might bleed over here. So they are individual, but at the same time, just like how hunting grounds and things like that overlapped in Indian country, we could give that story too if we want to.
I think that's exactly what I was hoping for, Major. That's much better put than I managed to make it, but that is what I was hoping for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Major,
Yes.
this is Darnell. I think that's a great idea there, because you already have the concept of the lodge, and I think they got the idea. So if you have the bottom part is a little more open, will give you more space to work with, and also people that are learning something about another culture, another ethnic, whatever, their imagination needs to be, I suppose, satisfied, but also leave a lot to the imagination as well. And there's a blending there that you can find. And we talked about balance earlier. I think that all can be done very well with what you have here. Space is utilized in a good way, and also to utilize each space to its best capacity, the highest capacity you could possibly get.
Good.
And I think Native people were very good at that. When we moved, we did it very well.
Yeah.
When we're on the move, we did it very well.
Exactly. Well, and I think this is a symbol, this whole thing is a symbol of that buffalo again. It's just like, no, we need to use every single bone, every single part of it. It's not just the meat that we got to get to. This is really, it's a good challenge for us to say, how do we occupy every single corner in a way that's meaningful? I hear that so much when I meet with tribal people on different projects I've worked on, is that we talk about, well, it doesn't need to be a very dramatic space. It needs to be something meaningful. So I think if we keep that in mind, I love your comments about children, and that goes for elders as well. How do we incorporate that? And it's a lot to incorporate into one space, but I think that's exactly how it should be, is how do we fit it all in, and how do we keep it meaningful?
You know, Major, if you go to option 3, well, maybe what I'm thinking about is creating an S curve in there, where we're coming in, the entry, we go up. Let's go back to 1.
Mhm.
since we're.
You just like
interacting
telling me what to do, don't you?
Uh, it's coming into entry, going up towards the tribal showcase, and then S-curving it down through the opening. And then S-curving it back up towards, now we're incorporating more space. Let's go back to option 2 now. If we were to come out of where we say Arbor Gallery, where we push that to the wall,
Yeah,
and we S-curve it down towards the middle where the two lodges meet, then we would have 2 walls, one for exhibit and on the other side exhibits. We would have a double exhibit area there. Then it comes on down to the bottom where we have seating, S-curves down through screen, and then now on up out through exit.
Hmm.
We would have that S-curve in the middle of the lodges where we would have exhibit space on both sides of the wall.
Hold on
We
a
would
second.
have that natural flow of that S
Okay,
coming in from the entry, that S coming through, and then exiting out through the exit. side.
come in through here, right?
Yep.
Go-
Go to your left.
Huh?
You go to your left.
Oh,
Okay, you go around.
uh-huh,
Now where it says Arbor Gallery, that would be pushed to the wall.
right.
Now we would have an S curve that comes down by that arrow between
Comes
the two lodges that way. Yes, come on down. Comes on down through. Now, in that particular area, we would have exhibit space on both sides of that. And it wouldn't be a wall all the way to continuous to the ceiling. It might be only an 8 or 9 foot wall. And then we circle on down through seating area.
Down through here.
Come through, yes, come down through screen,
Mhm.
and then we would exit on up towards the sun window.
Oh,
just-
exit, sorry. Let me, so exit back up through here is what you're saying.
Right, right. And see, now we have that S space there where we would put exhibits on both sides of the wall.
Yeah, now over here, we do have a zone 9 that we have to keep in mind too. But over here, you know, is some space that we need to discuss what we're going to do. But I understand what you're saying here is that it's a continuous kind of S all the way through here.
Right.
We would have to, this would open up then a different opening. So we would have 2 openings is what you're saying to the lodge.
No, we just say keep the one,
Oh,
but we would have more exhibit space.
oh, so, but if you're coming in here though,
That would be just a. There would be an opening there where they would come into that space.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I see what you're saying about traveling through it and keeping people moving through that and going in one direction. I think there's some other things kind of coming to mind about this too, that it gives us information to work on then to start to not only travel through, but how we want to maximize the exhibit spaces too.
You know, one thing, looking at the overall plan, zone 9 and zone 10, those to me could be combined to where now we take over that space, that wasted space right next to the sun window. And that walkway would now continue on down, but the left side of Montana zone 9 would become tribal nation area. And then where the pathway goes up closest to the wall now would become zone 9. And then zone 9 and 10 would share that existing space there.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what that would all entail, young Montana. But see, that space would be shared between those 2, 9 and 10.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let me ask you something here too. What do you all think of the use of those elements, whether it be this first element, which is the feel of an arbor. And what do you think of utilizing the lodge? And do you like both, or do you prefer one over the other, or what?
I think both are good, except, when we're looking at that second smaller lodge, you're now confining an area which, because you've already defined the lodge on the big side, on the left side, that could be, to me, a little bit more opened up for more exhibits.
Mhm.
I just think that people coming into Montana that don't know anything about Indians, the more that we can show them in terms of displays, in actual material and information, gives them a better idea as to coming in as to what they do when they exit. I was into the National Museum there. We were part of it in the very, very beginning, and then politically we were taken out of that. But what we were trying to do is, you go into the exhibit, you come out of there and you know something. I
Mhm.
noticed that some of those first exhibits out there, you go in there and you come out and you're still saying, what was that all about?
Mhm.
And I think this particular project is one where we can really enhance not only the knowledge, but the presentation of the Montana tribes in terms of how they're represented in this whole display.
Mhm. Good.
That's unique.
Good. Good. Well, and and when I ask about these spaces, just like as we're looking at it in plan, we have to look at it in 3-dimension, and you notice the lost spaces that we need to claim, here and here, and what's happening over there. But then you look at it in elevation as well.
Yep.
Let's see if I can, I gotta stop this.
Well, one of the things is, if you go to the original Historical Society, the exhibit area, we could put a sky area up on that top level where that line is, where you have the 20-foot mark.
Mhm.
You could do a star presentation up there of where we're looking at it from Montana up into the sky of the Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere. And then where you have your top of your lodge and the top of your other exhibits, that wouldn't be confined, because as you're going around that, whatever we determine that pathway is, you look up into the ceiling, and there's the exhibit of the sky, as to how we as Plains people associated with the sky people and the sky legends. And that's something that would be depicted up on the very ceiling of that high area.
Smokey, that's actually something we've been looking at for the whole Homeland Gallery, is treating the lighting and the ceiling in a way that expresses both the day sky and the night sky. We're looking at lighting control systems that might let us do that.
Good. We did that in the new high school, where we put a looking like you're looking up into the teepee and looking at where the poles are tied,
Mm.
where the circles on the lodge was. We put the lights on the over the desk in the entryway to the library itself. And so it gives you that concept when you're sitting in the middle of that lodge looking up. You still have that concept of the lodge, even though the lighting is part of that, which is great. I like that.
Yeah. That, like Taylor said, that's something that's important that we're thinking about too, is not only what it spatially starts to look like, but what it looks like in 3-dimension and in the whole environment.
Yep. Good.
Okay. So then it sounds like these two elements, we like utilizing both. They both have a story to tell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I really like the idea of the arbor and the teepee in association to one another. But I think one of the things we're missing is, when we were kids there in Indian school, we always looked for some open space to have a smoke, and got to be some place that you can hide from the sisters, and light up a Marlboro.
I thought you rolled your own.
Yeah, we did that too.
Yeah.
We did that too.
Okay, we'll find a smoking spot. You know, we talked about smudging, so maybe wherever we're smudging, we can be smoking.
Smoking and smudging.
Well, you know, if you do that, you can run into an equity problem. Those people that chew, they're gonna have one someplace.
That's good.
Oh, no. This is going the wrong way. Now we're gonna have little spittoons everywhere and stuff like that.
Yeah, we better get back on trail.
I think Mr. Lozauer is advocating that for us to interpret mischievous and misbehavior as well as good behavior.
Well, that's my only experience. So what else can I say?
I think that's important. I'm putting down smoking area here. Yeah. Good. These no, seriously, I mean, this is really all important. And you bring up a really good point, Steve, is that as I've always, you know, when Smoke Signals, the movie came out, I went to see it. My wife and I went to see it in Florida, and we sat in the audience and we were watching it. And she and I were just busting out laughing at different things until we looked around. We realized a lot of the times we were laughing by ourselves. And so what it told me was that, you know, we always know that humor is important in our culture. It's a part of our culture. And so if we can embody some humor in the storytelling here, I think that's important too. Because maybe it's because of all of the calamities and the horrible things that have happened to our ancestors that that we need that humor in order to keep moving forward. But it's a part of our history too. So I think we need to incorporate it, and we'll find those ways.
Good.
Major, I have one comment on the smoking part of it.
Yeah.
Just remember that the tobacco was one of our first plants, and that we didn't have the carcinogens and all the things that are in there now. So that would be a good place to tell that story.
That's good.
No, good call.
That's good. Yeah. Great. Good. Well, this has been very helpful. I don't know if any of the, I know Marty, we have you on for Cushiturl as well. And I don't know if you had anything else to add, or anybody, I think Molly's on, if you had any other comments before we kind of finish up.
Major, this is Marty. I didn't have any comments. I mean, I think it was good dialogue. So I think you got a list of items to kind of vet through, and I'm assuming we're going to come back with some other options.
Yes, that'll be the next steps, is that we'll take what we're hearing today and start to weave it into a plan that embodies a lot of that. We wanted to start with a few options to really bring those ideas out. So this was a good discussion. Yeah.
Just sorry, this is Molly. Just echo what Marty said, to thank everybody for their participation and thoughtfulness in the plan, and we'll look forward to continue to revising it.
Good. Thank you, Molly.
Major.
Yeah.
This is Richard Little Bear.
Hey, Richard, how are you?
That's too involved a question. I don't want to answer.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah.
I missed quite a bit of it because I keep getting, we got quite a bit of a donation from an organization, and people are interested in that. They've been calling me to make comments and so forth. So I missed quite a bit of this what you were going through. But I think you and I have talked about what's going in, what would be going in here.
Mhm.
But what this is just almost my personal thing, is that so many times when these are built, like even the American Indian Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C. It seems like everything is pointed towards the past,
Mhm.
and that keeps us that keeps Native Americans permanently in the past. We have people who are we have Native Americans who were astronauts, for instance, who are lawyers and medical doctors and so forth. And somehow that gradual transition to another culture
Okay, lunch.
Mhm.
should be put in.
Mhm. Yeah.
Somebody can, because as I said, I had some input in that museum in Washington, and I thought it was all one-sided. It was in the past. It never dealt with the horrific incidences like the Trail of Tears or the Long Walk of the Navajo. And here in the state of Montana, we have the attempted what would have been a massacre if Custer had had his way.
Mhm.
And the people who were at Judith Gap, those kind of things. I think there's got to be a balance because we haven't been treated right by the United States. And sometimes that's swept under. I'm not trying to bring up an issue that's controversial, but it's something that's a unique part of our history. And yeah, that's all. I didn't mean to prolong this or end your wonderful this presentation on a down note or anything like that. But I think those things are very important.
Yeah. No, don't. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's all.
Mhm. And don't even worry about that. And I'll just take a little bit of license here to say for the design team, whether it be, Cushion Turl or Main Street Design or even the Montana Historical Society, we've had those type of conversations already. And this, we're talking about just one area of this, but all the other zones, Richard, do incorporate those stories that tell true stories about tribal people throughout Montana's history and before Montana's history too. So, so it doesn't fall on deaf ears, and I agree with you. And we've talked about, representing not only the past accurately, but also representing tribal people in the present and the direction that we're going to. So it's a big order, but I think if we keep that in mind, then what will be represented here is exactly that we are people that are still here today, and that we look different because of the different jobs that we have now, but we've come from a very strong past and ancestry too. So don't worry about how you explain that. I thought it was perfect.
Major, that's I agree with Richard. And in zone 9 and 10, I think each tribe would have an opportunity to showcase some of their tribal members who have attained those high levels of achievement. And that would be up to the individual nations to select those individuals and have just a short bio as terms of how they come from a boarding school, as how they went through the educational system and how they became, you know, that renowned person or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And again, we have a great opportunity with the spaces that we'll have to work with and the media too, because we can certainly show that in the media and tell that story. Good. Good. Well, I don't know if there are any final thoughts. I know we're kind of at the end of the meeting. This has been really, really helpful to us. Thank you for all your comments. Each time we meet with you, it's like we go deeper and deeper into putting as much meaning into these spaces as possible. We'll have a chance to talk about the other spaces in the future too, but we really wanted to focus on this Zone 8 for the Tribal Nations Homelands exhibit. So
I would recommend everybody get their COVID shot so we could meet one-on-one.
yeah.
Good idea.
I'll give you one if you give me one then. So was it? Oh, that's somebody
Go
else
up there,
that's
Senator
talking.
Weber.
Oh, wait a minute. Susan's here. Are you there, Susan? Yeah, good to see you. What we did, I wanted to let Susan and Richard to let you know too, is that we're recording this now. So we'll make this available. And that way, for those that couldn't be here today or only got here for a portion of it, you can listen to the discussions. And I'll be sending out the presentation so you can take a look at it as well. And if you have additional thoughts afterwards, please email me or Andy. Let us know what you think, what you like, what you don't like, because we can start to use that information. So we'll send that around too, so everybody can listen in. All right. All right. Well, thank you all again. If nobody else has anything else, then we'll go ahead and end the meeting.
Well, I thank everybody and happy holidays.
Thank you.
Just get
Thanks,
on and
everyone.
then you guys are quitting.
No, we just got to the meat of it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you'll send us the link to the, all right. I'll catch up with it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Everybody have a good and safe holidays. All right. And we'll set something up for the new year.
Okay.
That's Noel.
All right. Stavasa Woms until we see each other again.
See you later.
Happy holidays, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jennifer, how do I stop this?
Just go down and delete.
Did you capture the recording?